Giving all praises to Yahweh by Hashem Yahawashi by Hashem Harakakadash for saying double honors to our apostles and elders here, great millstone, peace and blessings to the hopefully elect. So, as promised, I want to touch on the reason why those wicked scribes and Pharisees during the time of Yahawashi had persecuted both Yahawashi as well as the disciples, including Paul. And it's important to know because we are reliving the book of Acts. As of right now, you have the lot of Yahawashi and the apostles who come and teach in his name, proclaiming his name, and proclaiming that salvation is by faith and grace. And then you have the wicked scribes and Pharisees, or the sect of Pharisees and the sect of Sadducees, which believed in justification by the law, and they didn't believe in the Messiah, either because they just didn't believe in the resurrection, or they just flat out just didn't believe. They are not of the elect. Or a lot of them are just simply against Yahawashi so that they can maintain their position in this life and to maintain their position over the people as a leader over the people. Now we have to say wicked ones because even when you read the book of Acts 3, a lot of the same men who actually persecuted Yahawashi was ranting in the crowd, stay away with him. A lot of them was pricked in their heart after they saw the miracle of the apostles, and they repented. They actually repented. So most of them did, while majority of them, the wicked ones, didn't, because the apostles who continued in Yahawashi's footsteps, proclaiming his name, they were getting beat, persecuted, harassed, tried in court because they kept teaching in that name. And the same wicked scribes and Pharisees wanted those same ones to be put out of the synagogue, or be put out, or be put to death, because these are the reasons we're going to go over. You're going to see that it was based upon their position in Rome that they had, money, which is that too, as well as fear for being persecuted as well. Fear for being persecuted as Yahawashi, being a martyr for Yahawashi, and being in a position where, they basically fear for their life. It boils down to money too. And it also boils down to control over the people. They want control over the congregation as leaders, because Yahawashi said that parable for a reason, which I'm probably going to read, about the vineyard, the keepers of the vineyard. And they said, no, we can slay the heir, and then now this is our inheritance. So they want control, right? When you read the book of Maccabees, the Israelites, the wicked ones who wanted to join themselves into the Greeks, were seeking a higher position. They wanted to be a higher position. They wanted to be somebody. You even had Israelites, which while we were fighting in the wars, they act unwisely and went to try to make names of themselves and was put to death. A few accounts of those. So you always have Jake looking to make a name for himself and trying to exalt himself above the people. And they try to use the truth or whatever avenue they can to do that. And Yahawashi dealt with it. The apostles dealt with it. That's why we're going to deal with it today. It's your job to discern who are the true prophets, who are the men of the Lord, and who are just in it for the sake of money, fame, gain. And that's why they're teaching the doctrine they're teaching. So starting off at John 11, verse 47, then gathered the chief priests and the Pharisees a council and said, what do we? For this man doeth many miracles. If we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans shall come and take away both our place and nation. So you're hearing the reasoning for them to persecute Yahawashi. One of the main reasons was envy. They saw that because during that time, the scribes and the Pharisees were looked at as doctors of the law. They exalted themselves above the people. They were the go-to people for understanding. People looked at them with authority. But when Yahawashi came on the scene, he spoke with authority and he spoke the truth. And he had those same Pharisees. He was schooling them. A lot of them believed, like Nicodemus, he believed. But even the people saw, they said, how is it this man speaketh? And the Pharisees, he speak with authority. They ain't even saying it. He got them on hush mode. So they all believe in Yahawashi, and they was moved with envy. Like, man, he's gathering all these people away from us. And if we leave him alone, eventually the Romans are going to come and overthrow us. So they wanted to maintain, they were seeking to save their own life, and they wanted to maintain their position. because as Yahawashi was being called what? Master and rabbi and king of the Jews, being under the Roman Empire as servants. If that fame spread enough, though they believe that the Roman Empire would eventually come and destroy everybody because they're saying that Yahawashi is the king of the Jews. He's the king. That's why Herod the Great, what caused him to move to wrath to put the children to death, because they said that what? The king of the Jews is born. That's why, what is that, Matthew chapter 3? I'm sorry, Matthew 2. Now when Yahawashi was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east of Jerusalem, saying, where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Why was he troubled? Because he was the king of the Jews. The king of the Jews was born. They was afraid that the Romans thought that they were going to be taken down. That's why he put out that kill order. So even with the Israelites, which you're going to hear, when Yahawashi was being praised and acknowledged as the king of the Jews, the wicked scribes and Pharisees who didn't believe, they said, look, if we leave this man alone, the Romans are going to hear that he's king of the Jews. They're going to take offense, because the Caesar might come in here and say, king, I'm the king. Who's this king? And then they're going to overthrow us and we're going to lose our position, and they might even slay us too. Goes on, back in John 11. Verse 49, and one of them named Caiaphas, being the high priest that same year, said unto them, ye know nothing at all, nor consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and that the whole nation perish not. And this spake he not of himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Yahawashi should die for that nation. So you see, you had believers, the high priest believers, but the majority of them did not. The overwhelming majority did not. That's why they were able to send Yahawashi to the Romans. Verse 53, then from that day forth, they took counsel together for to put him to death. So they already made up their mind. Now it's time to send in the spies. Now it's time to get him ensnared in his word. We need to get him out of here because we are afraid of our position and our money. So now, if we go to some stories in Acts, showing you that they were more concerned about money and their position and control over the people and status. And they feared for their own lives. They didn't want the reason that they didn't want the name to be taught, or they persecuted the apostles, because if they're saying you keep teaching in that name, Yahawashi, and he's known as King of the Jews, you're gonna bring his blood upon us. You're gonna cause us to suffer the same fate as him, because you keep teaching in his name, because he's acknowledged as King of the Jews, and the Romans are going to come and persecute us. So this is Acts 16. This is dealing with Paul and Silas and Barnabas. Acts 16, 14. And a certain woman named Lydia, a seller of purple of the city of Thyatira, worshipped Yahweh, heard us, whose heart the Lord opened, that she attended unto the things which were spoken to Paul. And she was baptized in her household. She besought us, saying, if ye have judged me to be faithful to the Lord, come into my house and abide there. And she constrained us. And it came to pass, as we went to prayer, a certain damsel possessed with the spirit of divination met us, which brought her masters much gain by soothsaying. The same followed, let's look up the word soothsaying. Like divination, like prophesying. Yeah, to act as a seer, oracle, right? So she brought them much gain by soothsaying. The same followed Paul and us, and cried, saying, these men are servants of the Most High Yahweh, which show unto us the way of salvation. And this did she many days, but Paul being grieved, so she was kind of, bugged out a little bit. She just kept bugging him. Turned and said unto the spirit, I command thee in the name of Yahawashi HaMashiach to come out of her. and he came out that same hour. And when her masters saw that the hope of their gains was gone, they caught Paul and Silas and drew them into the marketplace and unto the rulers. So did they know about Paul and Silas? Of course. When did it matter to them? When Paul rebuked the spirit of that woman that was in that woman. So now she was cleansed, but now they said, you just took away our money. She brought us much gain by money. You know what? Let's grab these people up. And here's what they had to say. And brought them to the magistrate, saying, these men, being Jews, do exceedingly trouble our city, and teach customs which are not lawful for us to receive, neither to observe, being Romans. So here's what they said. They said the same thing. This man, they bring in strange doctrines. They talking about some salvation is by faith and justification by faith. These men are teaching a strange doctrine. They're teaching different customs. So they also are being accused of teaching contrary to the law, which they're not, but they're teaching faith, right? And you're like, yeah, and we Romans, so they're teaching stuff contrary to what we believe. They're also teaching that Yahawashi is king of the Jews. And we know that there's only one king, Caesar. Yes, these are the things they were saying. And we'll end it there. But you see what moved them to get the apostles? Because again, because they're money. And then they just use the doctrine for the sake of saying these men are teaching contrary to what we believe. They're talking about some salvation by faith. They're talking about resurrection of the dead. And we are Romans. We Romans, and our king is Caesar, and he teach a whole different person, Yahawashi, king of the Jews. We don't know who that guy is. Then if you go to Acts 17, you start at the top. Now when they passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where was a synagogue of the Jews. And Paul was, as his manner was, went in unto them, and 3 Sabbath days reasoned with them out of the scriptures, opening and alleging that Yahawashi must needs have suffered and risen again from the dead, and that this Yahawashi, whom I preach unto you, is the Messiah. And some of them believed and consorted with Paul and Silas, and of the devout Greeks a great multitude, and of the chief women not a few. So he successfully, through the Spirit, persuaded many of them to believe. But the Jews, the sect that didn't believe, which believed not, moved with envy, took unto them certain lewd fellows of the baser sort, and gathered a company, and set all the city on an uproar, and assaulted the house of Jason, and sought to bring them out to the people. And when they found them not, they drew Jason and certain brethren unto the rulers of the city, crying, that these have turned the world upside down, are come hither also. So they're laying a false report again. They're just taking the crowd. They're laying blame to the apostles. Why? Because they were losing disciples. They had people who converted to the truth. So what did they do? They laid a false blame to these men. And here's the point. They also said, verse 7, whom Jason have received, and these all do contrary to the decrees of Caesar, saying that there is another king, one Yahawashi. So you see what they're saying, right? We just read before, right? They said if we leave this man alone because he's king of the Jews, they were calling him master. And is that what they were calling him? Was it Rakai or master? Let me see. Or maybe I think I'm wrong. Let me type in, I think they, no. So they said, let me see. They called him, I believe it wasn't rabbi. Let me find it. One second. All right, it took me a minute to find it, but it was Hosanna they called him. So this is Matthew 21. Verse 9. And the multitudes that went before and followed, saying, cried, saying, Hosanna, the son of David. Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. Hosanna is in the highest. So they're talking about Yahawashi. He came in on a colt, and they called him Hosanna, which, let's see, in the Greek, be propitious. O save, the Hebrew origin, O save, O save. So it's two word, na yasha, na yasha, which means to save. Nasha means to save. Na'a means pray now. So pray now, save us. So save us. Right, so save us. Na'ayasha. That would be the Hebrew word. So this is what they called him, right? Verse 10, and when he was, read that again. And the multitude that went before and that followed cried, saying, Hosanna, the son of David. Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest, right? And when he was coming to Jerusalem, all the city was moved, saying, Who is this? And the multitude said, This is Yahawashi, the prophet of Nazareth of Galilee. So if we jump down, verse 15. And when the chief priests and the scribes saw the wonderful things that he did, and the children crying in the temple, saying, Hosanna, son of David, they were sore displeased. So why were they displeased? Because Yahawashi was getting fame and doing good things, and many people were praising him and believing on him. So they were sore displeased because they said, we're losing the congregation. We're losing them to this guy, because they didn't believe him. So this is why, this is why these same Israelite groups who were saying that are in their same lot, in particular the ones we're highlighting is like Sicarii and Iuic, they don't talk about Yahawashi. They don't talk about the things that Yahawashi did and what he had to go through. They don't talk about how the wicked scribes and Pharisees persecuted Yahawashi. They don't talk about that because deep down they know that they are those same ones, and they don't want to speak on it because they don't believe themselves. They believe that they're justified by the law, and that deep down they don't believe that they need Yahawashi. Right? They won't talk about these things. They won't read Matthew 23 and give examples of who is that talking about, because they know they're in their same lot, and deep down they agree with these wicked scribes and Pharisees when they brought charges to Yahawashi, false charges, as well as Paul. So that's just another example. They were sore displeased. So if we go back to Acts 17 and 5, so we were at Jason. So verse 7. So it says, whom Jason have received, and these all do contrary to the decrees of Caesar, saying that there is another king, one Yahawashi. So Yahawashi was acknowledged as a king. He was king of the Jews. People called him Hosanna, which means, O save us, son of David. And they were saying, as we read, if we leave him alone, they're going to cause the Romans to run in on us, because if Caesar hear that there's another king, just like Herod heard, they're going to move with fear, and they're going to come and they're going to bring us down, because we're teaching that we're talking about another king, right? So they were more concerned about their position. Well, in this case, these individuals, we're in chapter, I already read that. So let me keep going. It says, and they troubled the people, the rulers of the city, when they heard these things, right? So again, false. They were using what they were teaching as an excuse to bring charges on these men, like Jason. Jason is accepting these people bringing in strange doctrines, and they're going against the Roman authority, and they're teaching that there's another king, and we know that there's only one king, which is Caesar. This was just a way to get them to be quiet, because they were losing the congregation. They wanted to have the sole control over the congregation. That's what that was all about. Like as Yahawashi said, the parable of the vineyard. They want the inheritance for themselves. So when you go to, Iuic, and you see this doctrine of marriage and hell, and you hear all this stuff, All this to control, this just to try to control the people and lock them in to say, you got it, you ours, basically. You gotta, if your spouse don't believe, you gotta get rid of her. Huh? But the scripture clearly says you can have an unbelieving spouse. So, but according to Bishop Nathaniel, this is how he thinks marriage is. Y'all both need to be believers. Y'all both got to be in IUIC, and your children got to believe too. And if they don't believe, they got to go too. Clearly against the scriptures, as Yahawashi said. Thus, you have made the law of the Most High none effect by your tradition, because you're causing people to commit adultery. That's breaking the law by your tradition, by what you think. As Romans 10 says, they have a zeal of the Most High, but not according to knowledge, going about to establish their own righteousness. So they're making void the law of the Most High with their own tradition, with their own doctrines. Because it's just all about control. And they have to teach justification by the law, because then they can parade themselves as some leaders and the commandment keepers. And if you got to be saved, you got to go through them, and you got to put on their clothes and their garments. You got to meet at their school. You got to bring your wife around. You got to bring your kids around. You got to bring all that in so that they can claim you as their disciples. But if you preach that salvation is by faith in Yahawashi and belief, now they lost all control. That's why they can't teach that, or they don't believe that. And then they teach a hell doctrine, as it's just more as of a fear. It's just fear tactics. It's trying to control the vineyard. As Luke 20 says, like he said, the parable. Verse 14, 20:14, just to go to the point. But when the husbandmen saw him, they reasoned among themselves, saying, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him, that the inheritance may be ours. So that's their mindset. We can slay him, and then now we have complete control over the inheritance is ours. But what do Yahawashi say? So they cast him out of the vineyard and killed him. What therefore shall the Lord of the vineyard do unto them? He shall come and destroy these husbandmen, and shall give the vineyards to others. And when they heard it, they said, Lord forbid. Like, Lord forbid that, that they did that. They basically were in agreement. And he beheld them and said, what is this then that is written? The stone which the builders rejected, the same is become the head of the corner. Whosoever shall fall upon that stone shall be broken, but whomsoever it shall fall, it will grind into powders. And the chief priests and scribes the same hour sought to lay hands on him, and they feared the people, for they perceived that he had spoken his parable against them. So they knew, oh, he's talking about us because of what we doing and this and this and that. So again, so they had a target on Yahawashi simply for the fact that he was drawing a crowd. Many believed on him. And they had to say, look, you got to stop that. They were persecuting the apostles because they were concerned about their gain and their money and their position. We go back to Acts. We go to Acts 13. Paul and Barnabas speaking. Many believe. Acts 13. Verse 43, now when the congregation was broken up, many of the Jews and religious proselytes followed Paul and Barnabas, who, speaking to them, persuaded them to continue in the grace of Yahawashi. Grace. They don't like that word either, grace. Grace, faith, and mercy. They don't like those words because it takes away their self-righteousness glory and their self-justification glory and justification by the law. The next Sabbath day came almost the whole city together to hear the word of Yahweh. But when the Jews saw the multitudes, they were filled with envy, and they spake against those things which were spoken by Paul, contradicting and blaspheming. So they were just trying to throw off. They were just lying for the sake of what? They were envious and jealous of the fact that they were drawing away all these people, drawn away from them. That's what they got upset at. They were concerned about their position. Even in John 11, I read that, so I believe it's John chapter 12. But they were talking about how they even got to put Lazarus to death because he was an example. Can you believe that? They wanted to put Lazarus, whom the Lord raised. They said, we even got to try to put him to death. Oh, shoot. Because many people follow him because he's alive. And he's a dang witness that yet this man is a great man. Yeah, man, these are the type of guys that Yahawashi had to deal with. John chapter 12, verse 9. Much people of the Jews therefore knew that he was there, and they came not for Yahawashi's sake only, but they might see Lazarus also, whom he had raised from the dead. But the chief priests consulted that they might put Lazarus also to death, because that by reason of him many of the Jews went away and believed on Yahawashi. So they were even considering putting another man to death just to try to kill any noise of praising Yahawashi, because they were losing disciples. Many were believing. So as you can see, it's just about control and numbers and position and money. Read the book of Maccabees. Jason, we think we may have found Jason making an agreement with the Greeks, causing the people to wear a hat, merging the truth with the customs of the Greeks, just like in this truth, right? Merging the truth with the customs of this world, wearing fitted caps, half hood, half holy, going, being a game banger, and at the same time, I'm a Hebrew Israelite, not just any Israelite. I'm the chief priest. You can't disagree with me. I'm the top guy. Trying to merge the two, and it looks horrible. It looks horrible. This truth, these beautiful garments, you're gonna go and filthy and stain these beautiful garments with these garments of mourning, these garments that we put off in this world. You're gonna try to merge the two. Scripture says, put off the garments of mourning, the garments of sleep, being foolish. Put on the new garments. This truth right here, you ain't gotta merge the two, but that's what they did. That's what Jason did, for a position, for priesthood, for money, for gain. All back here today. Let's see, let's jump down. Verse 18, for this cause the people also met him, for that they heard he had done this miracle. The Pharisees therefore said among themselves, perceive ye how ye prevail nothing? Behold, the world is gone after him. So now these could have been some believers, and they were basically saying, like, look, you see your efforts are futile. The whole world is going after him. So, because their goal was to try to what? Draw the people back. Do away with the Yahawashi, you see. So their position, so now you got an idea, and I definitely want to talk about the name, but now you got an idea as of why in the ancient world, the reason they had a problem with Yahawashi, they were concerned about their position in Rome, they were concerned about money, and they were concerned about winning favor of the masses of the people. That's why you have these gimmicks and these stage and the cameras and all this stuff, this praise, Passover. We want to say a bunch of good words. It's just about gaining disciples to themselves. Has nothing to do with Yahawashi. Now, if we deal with the name, so we've established that the name of Yahawashi, the reason they had a problem with that was because he was considered king of the Jews. And that promotion of Yahawashi being king of the Jews was a fear that the Romans could come and ransack Jerusalem because they're talking about another king. So let's see, how did they feel towards the disciples teaching in the name? Acts 3, I want to read this. It says, in his name, this is Peter speaking, in his name through faith, see, his name through faith, in his name hath made this man strong, whom ye see and know, yea, the faith which is by him hath given him this perfect soundness in the presence of you all, because they were looking like that man was lame and now he can walk. Because Peter said, money, I have no money, but I do have this in the name of Yahawashi. Stand up and walk. And it was the faith that got him saved. It had nothing to do with works, but because of the faith. But of course, they said what? Go and sin no more. The point is, faith is what made the people whole. All they simply did was believe. And then they go and do the right works. But these guys wanted to be backwards, talking about the malefactor on the cross isn't going to get the kingdom of heaven because he didn't do anything to deserve it. He going to die. These unmerciful Israelites who just want to see their neighbor be taken away and destroyed and burning in hell, talking about some hell, just hatred for their brother. It's just hatred. Because this place called hell that Iuic teaches is reserved only for Israelites. But Esau Edom, yeah, he gets the kingdom and he gets the rest on the Sabbath. He gets rest on the Sabbath, but Jake gets to burn in hell. And then eventually Esau Edom are going to be destroyed. They're going to be taken out of here. Hey, and you know what they're going to say? Hey, at least I ain't no damn Israelite. Because they still burning to this day and they're going to keep burning forever. That's just hatred that they have towards their neighbor, towards their brother. You become judges of evil thoughts, man. Once you have respect of persons, talking about something you don't hate, you can't abhor Edomites, which the word abhor doesn't mean hate, and that you know damn well that that word Edomite isn't talking about an actual Edomite. Talking about a Syrian. You know that, but because of gain and that 501c3, talking about something that has nothing to do with money, Deacon Asaph. It has nothing to do, it has everything to do with money. Because you don't need a 501c3 to run a church. Look it up. A 501c3 is not required to run a church. The churches, just like IUIC, run to put themselves under the yokes and shackles of Egypt for filthy lucre's sake, for gain. And you guys make all this money, you can go get off the 501c3 now, but you want to keep that because of gain. And this is why you don't teach your name. So Peter's talking about the name. Verse 4, chapter 4, it says, and as they spake unto the people, the priests and the captains of the temple and the Sadducees came upon them, being grieved that they taught the people and preached through Yahawashi and the resurrection of the dead. Right? And they lay hands on them and put them in hold until the next day, for it was now eventide. Right? So they were upset. Peter said his defense. They said, look, this is all of Yahawashi, the name Yahawashi, the same ones that you persecuted. Here's what they concluded. Verse 15, but when they commanded them to go aside out of the council, they conferred among themselves, saying, what shall we do to these men? For that indeed a notable miracle have been done by them is manifest to all them that dwell in Jerusalem, and we cannot deny it. And that is spread no further among the people. So they were trying to, they didn't want the glory to spread. The name and the glory, that the power of Yahawashi, they wanted that under the wraps. It says, let us straightly threaten them that they speak henceforth no man in this name. And they called them and commanded them not to speak at all, nor teach in the name of Yahawashi. That was the threat. And then they kept teaching, right? Then eventually they got them locked up again. And that's why when you go to chapter 5, what was that? Oh, verse 27. And when they had brought them, they set them before the council, and the high priest asked them, saying, did we not straitly command you that ye should not teach in this name? And behold, you have filled Jerusalem with your doctrine, and intend to bring this man's blood upon us. So they were saying, if you teach in that name, Yahawashi, you're going to cause us to be overthrown by the Romans, because Yahawashi is known as the King of the Jews. So they were concerned about their position. And guess what group is advocately speaking against the use of the name of Yahawashi and Yahweh, IUIC. So you have to wonder why. It's because of their position. We believe because they took the bag for the sake of the 501c3. And then also look what happened recently, right? They had this story that they said this man who so-called went to kill homeless people. What did he say? They said, Yahweh made me do it. Now, clearly these people are starting to set up these false flags, these individuals to lay charge to the Israelites, right? But you see, right, they're trying to say what Yahweh, they're trying to link it to the Israelites. So that caught my eye. Says, so what they're going to do is most likely they're going to use that as an excuse to say anybody that's teaching in these names are considered radicals, right? And that reminded me, I said, see, this is why them Israelites, IUIC in particular, are so stiff on staying away from the names, because they're trying to save themselves from being persecuted as Yahawashi. So they're going to be like, no, we teach Jesus the Christ, Jesus the Christ. We don't know the name Jesus the Christ. So you can't come after us, Esau. You gotta leave us alone. We comply and meet our demands for the 501c3 each year. We do clean up trash, clean up the neighborhood. What other kind of social work, whatever you got to do, we good standing, boss. You got to leave us alone, and we don't teach Jesus Yahawashi. We teach Jesus. So you can't come against us. It's them guys that teach Yahawashi. So just watch when Esau continue to pull the squeeze and framing us, and they're using these names Yahweh. Eventually they're gonna say Yahweh Yahawashi, and then they're gonna say identify groups who use those names are clearly radicals, whatever it is. You're gonna see why their group is going to be they're going to deny the name even more when that time comes. Just watch. They're going to deny it even more because they're going to try to stay clear because they want to keep and maintain their position, just like these wicked scribes and Pharisees did during the time of Yahawashi. So as you can see, the evidence is overwhelming. If you're spiritual, you can see we are reliving the book of Acts again. You have the true believers, the disciples, which represents Yahawashi, and the apostles. We're in our lot, Lord willing, with those men. And then you got these other men, the heretics, the wicked Pharisees and Sadducees, Judas was one. Who believed in being carnal and rebelling against Rome. You got all those people back today. Okay? So this is nothing new under the sun, and more evidence is going to reveal that these men are those men. And if you are sincere and you watching them guys, it's time to separate yourself, man. It's time to separate yourself. Okay? With that, sure.